Let's see here. How gear for gold transformed WoW Classic forever. Um, do I agree with that just off of before watching the video? Changed it forever. Changed it. I would agree. Yeah, but I think it was inevitable. Like to be honest, whether it was gear for gold or gold for raids, like it was inevitable that you'd get to a point where people were so geared out, like at the like they're basically done with the game, that they can do things that would take advantage of those who did not or are not at that level by helping them for monetary gain, whether that monetary is digital or real life. So
How gear for gold transformed rating forever. This is obviously something I have a lot of opinions on.
Whether it's the small green
yeah, I think Asmund said he did that a lot. My guild really didn't do that. We did it, I think, a little bit, especially during ZG, but that's about it.
satchel you found off your first kobold, that pair of common quality shoulders that dropped in the barrens, or seeing an epic BOE drop, loot in World of Warcraft has always been one of the things that make it exciting, all the way from the start of your journey right to the end game and raiding. In vanilla back in the day,
All about
getting
the
your
perks.
first epic was like a rite of passage. Even if you did
Getting your first epic, I don't know about Rite of Passage, but it definitely was a memorable event. Um, or getting your full tier set as well, like to me was even more important, like a much bigger event. I think the first epic, depending on what epic you got, I think the first epic weapon is more like the Rite of Passage he's talking about. Um,
did manage to see inside a piece of raiding content, the chance you were actually going to be awarded an item among your 39 other raiders wasn't all that high.
yeah, that sucked. Like, not gonna lie.
In TBC, you could reliably expect to get epics from 5-man heroics, but they were
Yeah.
difficult. But at least you had badges, so you can eventually guarantee that you can buy something. And in Wrath, well, you'd be hard-pressed not to find some purples on your character after a few weeks.
Wrath definitely made it much more mainstream. I think it's a good thing, but everyone has their opinion on that.
And for some players, the gearing ladder, that going from fresh to bis, is what the game is really all about.
It's all about
and
the
why
loot.
shouldn't it be? One of the core features of an MMO is that your character exists in a persistent world and gradually gains power. And what better method to gauge that power gain than getting some perps? But getting those perps
Oh, that I need to do Nax.
That's last laugh, man. That's a really man that brings back memories.
Bro, like if this is me, I loot that to myself, I loot this to myself, easy.
Let's be fair. You probably get everything but the boundless ambition, and even that.
I just let the other two items rot. I'm done. I'm see y'all back in Old War.
especially the BIS ones, whatever the expansion, turns out to be quite difficult. Guilds will reserve items, favor certain raiders over others, or
Yeah. Thankfully, I was mostly in a guild that we focused like on the tanks and healers, and everyone else was, free for all. Obviously, you had the what was it GKP, whatever, like RDP. What basically you get points for how many raids you attend. But other than that, it was pretty much everyone had a chance to get loot. But yeah, I definitely when I was doing the hardcore rating, like really trying to be like in the top of the rating guilds. Yeah, they a lot of favoritism was going around.
prioritize roles for loot.
Of course.
And pugs are just unreliable and full of drama. People have connection issues after their item doesn't drop, players needing on stuff that's useless for them, and people performing terribly that you have to carry, and of course they are gonna roll.
Oh my god, yeah. Especially this fight. Like he did a really good job with the editing by adding this fight to that. Like I didn't pug too often, but man, this fight was a pug killer.
Higher than you when the item you want drops.
That's why you always do everything for rolls. Like, I am a very big believer in loot council. I am a loot council enjoyer, and I will be the first to tell you that if you win the roll on an item, and I feel like you're not trying in my raid, you lose the roll.
Ooh, I didn't know. I guess that makes sense though. I don't know if they should base it off of like DPS specs or like the meter, damage meter, but I don't know if I agree with that because it's like you should have kicked them before you downed the boss if that was the case. You know what I mean? Because it's like, well, you just waste like yeah, they may have like kind of wasted your time, but you really wasted their time because it's like they joined the raid. I guess if they like die immediately and they get rezzed and then die immediately again, then I would agree to that. But outside of that, I don't know. It's been a long time since I rated though, so maybe that's more fair.
Bonus rule just happened. Yep, I absolutely do that.
If there is a
You reward winners and you punish losers. If you don't do that, you just get losers.
better way to do all this, a way to skip the queue,
And you
a way
don't
to
get
know for
winners.
almost certain that if an item drops, you'll be able to get it without all the hassle of guilds or forming hard res groups.
Yeah, play a private server.
Well, many years ago, players came to a conclusion that there was, and this is done through gold. We
Yep.
make a raid, we invite a mix of people. So
Yeah, but I think like the amount of people who did this, I think a lot of people like the I don't know, it could be wrong because I didn't really play WoW Classic at the end game a lot, or at least the new WoW Classic. In the old school, like back in the original WoW Classic, like I never really heard too much about this. Like very, very, very few people did this,
some of
and they were kind of known in the server for being trash. Like great gear, but they as a player are trash.
them don't need any items, but they're gonna perform very well. These are the carry players.
Like the top warrior in our server, I still remember this. Top warrior in our server sold his character, like the whole character. I think he sold it for like 300 or maybe 500. I know it was like a couple hundred. And the dude who took over was so bad that people were dueling him outside of Ogremar. And like you had people with greens like kicking his butt. Like most of the time. Sometimes he just instant kill like some like the people because he's basically as geared as you could get. But man, that was just so funny. The guy got so mad, like he quit the game for like I think a week because a lot of people had them on like their friends list just to keep track of the guy.
Others are fresh level capped characters and they need loads of items,
Oh,
but
yeah.
they're gonna
They got
perform
big
very
money.
poorly. These are the buyers.
Yep.
We run through the content and at the end of it auction off every piece of gear. Highest bidder wins. No
My guild did this. They just put it like any BIS best gear or banana equip BOE gear that drop that we really didn't really like need for anyone would get sold, and then the funds would be added to the guild bank.
loot drama, no, that's not BIS for you. The only metric that matters is how much is
Money,
this
money,
item
money.
worth to you. Then at the end, the total pot of gold from all the auctions is divided out amongst the group. Everyone is
Well,
a
I don't know about that last part. I mean, that's like, you know, I mean, it depends on how you want to look at things, and like, you know, every group wants to do it differently. But like,
Yeah, sure has been. Oh my god, dude! Like this dude was like a degenerate of degenerates, freaking man. I don't think I've ever run into a player like Asmongold.
yeah, I mean, GDKPs, like, we did GDKPs back in Wrath. Like, original Wrath, like, we started doing this back in, well, the thing is, like, they let you trade gear.
But then I did it. I did stop raiding after. When did I really stop? I think in Wrath actually. Like I did Trial of the Crusader. Did of course Ice Crown, but I didn't really do Uldor. I did a little bit, but it just wasn't like that was when I was getting really kind of tired of raiding. So maybe that's why. Just getting out of the raiding scene gets you away from like really weird, like degenerate behavior. So
Gear in like Old War or something like that. Before that, you would have to need on the gear and then get a GM to ticket it to the other person, which is like really annoying, and so you didn't really do it that much. There were guys in China were doing GDKPs back in BC, but like it never really caught on in US until like Old War, and like it really caught on a lot in TOC, and then by ICC it was like full swing.
winner.
that makes sense then. Yeah, because I with Ice Crown. I did it once, just to beat the Lich King, and never went again.
The geared players have a reason to run and farm old content, and the fresh characters walk out with several purples. This loot system is known as GDKP,
Yep.
a mix of the infamous DKP system, which awarded players points based upon various guild set rules such as attendance, boss kills, and so on,
Yep.
and they could then go on
DKP
to
was a
use
good
those
idea.
points to bid on gear. And the G stands for gold, except the whole point system is just replaced by gold.
Yeah.
You bid on items with gold. That's it, really.
That's it.
And
That's
there's
all
so
there is to
many
it, yeah.
benefits to it. Everyone
look at it.
leaves with something. If you don't get items, you get gold.
I remember my guild was first doing DKP, like, because this was like super new to everyone. Um, like they really did not do it well. Like, I was kind of into like min maxing stuff, so I really took advantage of a lot of the things that my guild had set up because they were just going off of like freaking dumb rules to get points. So I always had more points than literally everyone. I think the guild leader was the only one who had more points than me, but we weren't even the same class, so it didn't even matter. I got everything I needed, usually way ahead of everyone else. I mean, it was dumb at first, but after a while, it made a lot more sense, and I don't know. I think nowadays DKP is fine. I don't know about the GDKP. Was kind of never got into that. Never seen it really happen. So I'm assuming it's trash because that means you have to have someone in there who's trash. So
There's no faster way to gear a fresh character than entering a GDKP with a full wallet. Full
wait. Is this Asmit? Like, does this dude use Asmit's freaking stream?
well that nobody is going to have connection
That's
issues
funny.
halfway through, because if they do, well, they're not going to get their cut at the end of the raid, are they?
That's the best part about GDKPs, is you can hold people's cut over their head and make them continue. Yeah, this is absolutely. We used to troll people by bidding on BIS trinkets. Yeah, we do the same thing.
You can add further incentives such as a performance cut for players who are best on DPS. This gives
Yep.
people a reason to actually want to try and perform well during these.
If you do GDKPs and you like scamming people out of the money, the best thing to do is add as many of these like different obfuscation measures as possible. That way it's harder for people to reverse engineer the math and see if you're taking gold out of the pot.
Raids, and believe me, since they started to get popular,
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have joined any of Asmin's raids just because it's like once you get to a point where reverse engineering isn't super easy, I'm immediately not interested because I just assume you're going to try to scam me, and I just don't want to deal with it. That's always the case. Like when something's overcomplicated like that, I'm just assuming you're trying to scam me because when it's complicated when it doesn't need to be, there's usually a reason for it.
in Classic, there is no gold maker
Yep.
in the entire game which can even remotely
198.
compete with taking other players' earnings in exchange for epics.
That's
but
right.
it shouldn't be a surprise that GDKPs have made a big return to Classic. They are an older invention than even Warcraft as an MMO, having roots in EverQuest alongside the original DKP loot system. Players realised pretty early on that, hey, even though we don't need anything from this content, other people do, and we
take
do
them
need
through
their
it, yeah.
gold.
Is that, as I said kind of in the beginning, it's always inevitable because you get to a point where you hit the ceiling, nothing else to do. Maybe you want to do like some crafting stuff, but you don't really want to spend the time grinding. Easiest way, sell what you have for gold so you can make the other thing easier.
Original vanilla, the idea of a GDKP was, well, very sparse, which in retrospect, with how much top guilds struggled on progression content, is a bit of a surprise, to be honest, considering that consumables were stacked by the dozen back then too. They would have needed loads of gold. I'm sure there's the odd story of the occasional bit of loot being auctioned off in vanilla, but as a widespread phenomenon, no, it really wasn't.
No, back.
Bringing people didn't really happen. And I think that is because like you couldn't really have too much dead weight in these kind of raids that I remember, especially considering not many people were that skilled to begin with. Obviously, you do these raids now; they're a bit of a joke, but back then, like these were pretty tough. And bringing dead weight along, even if it made they would pay, just wasn't really worth it.
Back then, if I remember right, people viewed auctioning off gold for gear in vanilla WoW as like basically scamming.
No, not at least on my server. It was pretty normal. Um, Even stuff you would find in the open world, like what there was like a sword, like a tanking sword. I forget now what it was, but it was like the a really good, maybe not quite as good as like raid quality, but it was like definitely up there. Um, that was just farmed all day by people because they would want to sell it, of course. If you found it while normal questing, like that was like hitting the jackpot. Like it happened to my friend. Like it was really cool. But no, that was normal. Like selling BOEs and stuff. Auctioning, maybe that's what he's talking about. I mean no, because they put it in the auction house, or they would say like highest bid gets it. So not really.
Wasn't. In TBC, there was a few more rumblings of people frequently joining the odd GDKP, and by the Sunwell
Yeah.
patch, all prior raid content had been nerfed, making it really easy and accessible. That being the likes of Tier 4 with Magtharad and Gruul's Lair and Karazhan were simple
Yeah.
starting points for this loot system, and players would often go and clear the trash at the start of the sun.
You know what? GDKP was probably the most prevalent on Gruul's Lair, at least on the servers I played on. Like it wasn't really a thing in the other ones, a little bit, but like Gruul's Lair, oh, that was like almost everyone was doing it because Gruul's Lair was just a DPS check. So if you knew how much DPS you could commit with like 18 people or whatever, like a few people missing, and you're still able to hit it, cool. You can bring people in. Doesn't really matter if they die right away because you have the DPS check. So
Had like kind of a soft GDKP with yeah, that's right. I think that we did GDKP Kara Trash. Yeah, I haven't thought about that for a
oh
long time, but
yeah,
I'm
Kara
pretty sure that
Trash.
we
Oh
did. I'd have
shoot.
to go back and look at
Yep,
the screenshots.
that was another one.
And this is like back in TBC. But like what we would
Not the bosses, but definitely the trash. I completely forgot about that. Man.
do, or like this isn't even me, like I didn't even run these raids, so the guys in my guild would do, is they would do Gruul's Lair, and they would say that if
See,
Dragonspine Trophy drops, we're going to be giving out 5,000 gold. And so people would join because it's like, oh, well, if this item drops, I get paid.
Well, and then sell off the very powerful epic recipes and BOEs. But it was really in Wrath of the Lich King that the GDKP began to show its head as a loot system that more and more players engage with. Particularly, there are many.
you also gotta remember, Wrath had probably the largest since at that time at least. Like they were way more casual players in Wrath than any expansion prior, or since Vanilla and Burning Crusade.
Articles out there which began to crop up around mid to late 2010,
Yep.
which in the World of Warcraft timeline was during the ICC patch.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Wrath was the perfect time for this loot system to go viral. By ICC, players were mega geared and could easily go back and crush
Yep.
old content to farm some gold. There was both 10 and 25 man modes for each raid, giving players choice, and as we well know nowadays, Wrath of the Lich King had the highest sub count ever. Lots of potential customers out there for those purples.
Oh, yeah.
One of the earliest articles I could find about World of Warcraft and GDKP was from
And this is the best thing about GDKP is everybody comes out ahead. It doesn't matter if you get the loot or not, everybody gets paid. And that's why GDKP was so appealing to people.
Yeah.
And is so appealing.
a blog released 1 month before Wrath dropped. It quotes a post from Elitist Jerks
I think WoW is also, or Wrath was one of the ones where if you get fully geared in that raid, you could crush that raid, like, pretty much with your eyes closed. I could be wrong, because like I said, I didn't read too much in Wrath, but that was the feeling I got and kind of what I remember. So doing GDKPs was far, far easier in Wrath than any other expansion.
on how GDKP works. Unfortunately, the Elitist Joke page link didn't work, but they certainly have the basics down,
Yeah.
including the upsides such as players are encouraged to stay right to the end, well-geared main characters
Exactly.
are encouraged to come even if they don't want any drops, and
I think
well-healed
that's also another big factor is it gives players that are geared a reason to do raids that they don't need gear from.
Yep.
And that's a huge positive.
That's a good thing.
ults can get geared
100%.
up quickly without much grind.
That's why a lot of games I wish would do more incentives for helping players, like Final Fantasy, when you're doing a duty queue and it's someone who's never done it before, you get bonus experience. So that's cool. Like I think more things like that that encourage you to help um, players, other players around you is always a good thing.
They also highlight the downsides. It
Obviously, you gotta like really get the king's head, otherwise people will take advantage of it.
encourages gold selling, and if you could spend some real cash for in-game gold and translate it so easily into items via a GDKP run, why would you do anything else? And they
Great question.
Hmm, I think that's a weird thing to say though, because back even in the day, you could buy characters. One second. All right.
do all
What I was talking about, characters. People, yeah, people bought characters, man. So it's like, why would you do anything else? I mean, one, you could get banned. I think even back then you could get banned for buying gold. So there was that, and then it was, I don't know, it's like cheating in a game. Like it's instant gratification, but probably not going to play the game long after that.
also mention or Blizzard or any company for that
Also, more people actually had friends, or like maybe maybe I'm the oddball here, but I don't really make too many friends in MMOs anymore. Um, and back then, like I did have plenty of friends, or at least people on a friends list I would play with. And if you just bought all the gear, like you jumped ahead of them, you couldn't go to rate. Like raiding with them, of course, you could still do, but it's like it wasn't the same thing because you weren't really wanting to get any gear anymore because you had better gear. You know what I'm saying? So
that matter needs to do is complete the circle and sell gold themselves.
This is on Elitist Jerks, right? So like we could pretty much like guarantee that Ian saw this post. Like 100%, he probably saw this shit. Yeah, that is crazy. Wow, look at that.
excuse me.
Well, we don't quite have that in Wrath. The WoW token came out in Warlords of Draenor, but the gold buying from
Damn. 352,000. I wonder how much I get for it now. I'm not really interested, but I always like to know this kind of stuff because it's like, is gold going to be that big of an issue? Because I might stop playing. Like if I feel like I have to really buy the WoW token, I usually just stop playing.
third-party websites to then spend in-game on items has always been a concern, and a valid one at that. You know, looking through these old articles and posts, at the time GDKP was seen a little cautiously, but generally positively. People like the idea of raiding for gold and having reasons to go back and do old content, which
Yeah.
Oh, I will say, by the way, I am a big advocate of GDKP. I am a GDKP enjoyer. I think GDKP is good.
I don't think there's anything wrong with GDKP. Because it's like, what are the negatives? Like, if you really think about it, what are the negatives? And it's people who probably wouldn't have raid to begin with now have raid gear. So maybe other than devaluing raid gear, but if that's like, is that really such a big deal? Because it's not like there is this like insane army of GDKPers. It's usually like a handful of people. Like it's not like a ton. So it's, I don't know. Like I don't see it as that big a deal, to be honest.
for a time was the focus of GDKP. Surely it wouldn't ever replace raiding with a guild on current content, let alone hard mode or heroic content,
No way.
would it? Enter classic World of Warcraft.
Yeah,
Some
there we go.
15 years after the original release, the game was back, this time with a very different player base. Instead of Rag living for months, he lived for a number of days. Each and every raid tier upon release was cleared within an hour or less, and those once revered purples flowed like water. Players rather quickly figured
Yeah, I brought this up earlier. Like, you just. Like, the raids in Classic were a joke. Are a joke compared to the raids that are releasing now. So that's why on a previous video you said Wrath is like the apex or like the best rating had ever been. It's like, no, it was much better than previous expansions, but like it can't really compare to the raids that are out now. You would just roll over them, like they're not difficult at all.
out, gee, this content's pretty easy, as well as, man, flasks sure are expensive. What if we were to take the long-standing
Yeah.
tradition of the GDKP and bring it back way earlier than it ever was
Smart.
before? And that is indeed what happened.
It's not that they thought about bringing it back way earlier than before. It's more like the knowledge is there now. Like, most people know about GDKPs, how they work. They got the system fleshed out. So it just makes sense. Like, even back then, like, if the knowledge was there, like, original WoW would have had it, most likely. It's just most people didn't even, like, know about it.
Too many GDKPs early on because, well, you needed some time for the buyers to level up, but by the time Blackwing Lure was out, well, we were well in the swing of things, and prices that items were going for totally out of the belief of any reasonable person. Oh, and by the way, very early on in Classic, I may hypothetically know that one Classic Gold was worth about 1k retail. No, really.
One classic gold was 1 to 1k, so it's like 1 million for 1,000 gold. Yeah, it's about right.
Gold was a huge part of Classic. So when you went out and farmed your 80 gold per hour and thought, that's not half bad, I feel quite good about myself there. And then you went on the internet and read Bone Reaver's Edge goes for 51,000 gold.
Yeah.
Dragon Spine Trophy goes for 37,000 gold in a day.
Well, yeah. Because botting in Classic WoW is just so prevalent. And a lot of the grinding spots is mostly just killing. Either dungeon spamming, chaining, like mage, like trains and stuff like that. It's like botting heaven. So it's like, that's why gold is so inflated like this. Because if there were no bots and stuff, and you had to rely on standard people playing the game generating gold, like these prices would be less, maybe a third of what they're showing.
Different GDKP, actually I'm joking, that's cheap. It went for 46k in this one, for example, and then next
yeah, I
round,
feel like DST, I mean, that's a best in slot until max situation, so like, yeah, of course people are gonna want that.
This came around and you began seeing pots come out at 87k for the entire raid, and perhaps to top it all off, Gressel Dawn of Ruin, the best one-handed sword in the game, selling for a total of 198,000 gold, which is just about 20k shy of the gold cap in the game.
That guy must have farmed a long time. That's a lot of Black Lotuses.
You saw that and thought to yourself, wow, why am I here thieving in Blackrot debts for minimum wage when I could be making thousands an hour instead if I join a GDKP? It begged the question, how on earth is
that's exactly what I did. Like, back in the day, I would 100% join GDKPs.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It's the number one to make gold. I mean, it is no problem with it being the number one way. The main problem is that it's such an inflated price. And because of bots. Like, bots, they ruin gold economies, unfortunately.
Like, we had a weekly...
It's like, Lazy Peon had his video on WillE play Dragonflight. He mentions in one of the games, I think it was RuneScape or Albion, where you can see how much your gold is actually worth in, like, money, like cash. And it just it demoralizes you. It's similar to, like, this and that, because bots are so prevalent in Classic WoW, they make your gold that you've earned the normal way seem like chump change. Like, you just made maybe a nickel in the last hour. So Like to me, it's just as bad. Like that's one thing MMOs really. When you let bots like really have their way in an MMO, it will destroy that economy. And if your economy is semi important, especially like in classic WoW towards the end, like gold is really pretty important. A lot of things cost quite a bit of gold. Like it just messes things really up. Like this price would not exist without bots, just straight up.
GDKP for ICC that we did. That remember that Death Knight Reinhardt? He used to make PvP videos. That was our raid leader, and we did this back at KT. I got my Bryn Troll, 277 heroic Bryn Troll. I got it in a GDKP run, in his run. I got it for minimum bid too. It was a good day.
Unable to amass such
we went
vast
hard on
quantities of gold, and benefit of the doubt, if they have faithfully been spending 18 hours a day in Diamol East for 3 weeks straight, why would they drop that entire sum of gold, all that work, on one single item? It just doesn't quite add up, does it? Moving into TBC, those BIS items kept dropping and the insane gold bids kept rolling in. Dragonfang Talisman became the new Drakespine trophy, and there are so many cases of it going for well in excess of 50,000 gold. The black
it's no big deal. I mean, I'm sure Warglaves went for 100k regularly.
Temple brought with it the infamous Warglaves of Azanoth, often pre-sold to ensure a good price. It wasn't unusual in the early weeks to see them well upwards of 6.
A few have been Bro, how do you have bro, I love how gamers think that somebody, like, we're gonna all be able to get together to, like, not pre-order games, but meanwhile, these fucking fiends can't even stop themselves from pre-ordering an item. That is just fucking degenerate. I love it.
Yeah, that really wasn't a thing, at least on my server. I'd never heard of anyone pre-ordering an item already. And my guild sold Warclaves, actually. I don't remember for how much anymore. But I remember when we did get a drop for it. Like our guild, like we were running some people. It wasn't even like a GDKP exactly. It was more someone paid to run the guild with, like just a normal run with us. And if they wanted gear, they had to roll for it. Like it wasn't like where they could buy gear. They paid for the run, and then they could roll for the gear with us. But like the Warglaves, like I remember they were telling them like, "Hey, if you want this, it's gonna be whatever amount. I can't remember anymore." But like they bought it, and everyone's like, at first was like I remember like almost a lot of people almost quit the guild there, but then our guild leader spread out the gold like evenly. I don't know if it maybe he whispered the guy and got more than what he said, but based on just what was typed in the actual raid chat, he split it all up, and everyone's like, okay, well, at least we got a ton of gold, because it wasn't like it was really the guild leader that could use the Wargalays, and I think like 2 other people, so it wasn't like a big deal losing him.
Like, this is the kind of stuff, by the way, I love about video games. I think this stuff is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you're truly experiencing an MMO when you're doing stuff like this.
This is the real emerging...
Because this is the kind of stuff that won't happen in any other type of game, period.
Gameplay that I think gives you just that slight little peek into the underbelly of the human condition.
I guess. I mean, I don't really know what he's talking about. I think everyone knows people like to pre-order stuff. Everyone knows people will pay money to get the best of the best, even if it's like overpriced. So I don't know.
It is just, it's so good. I love it. Player economies. You love to see it.
If it's run just by players, as I mentioned, I keep mentioning like bots will ruin it, but like standard player economies are actually really good.
For each of these legendary items, warriors with somewhat questionable gear alongside a glaive.
Wow. You know, the funny thing with me is that we had a guy win the offhand Warglaive in my group too. Except nobody got paid for it. And I'm pretty sure his gear was worse than that. Remember that guy?
Would occasionally begin to appear on your server, and during the opening week of the Sunwell, a GDKP cleared the entire instance, netting a total pot of just in excess of 1 million gold, during which Thoridal's
Jesus.
Star's Fury dropped and was bought for the unreal price of 350,000 gold.
By
That I'm trying to remember, but I'm like 99% sure this never dropped for us. Or at least when I played. My guild never got this. Yeah. I'm trying to recall, and I cannot remember it once dropping for us. Which is weird because I recognize it. So maybe one of my friends had it and not like a guild member.
like Thordile was only like marginally fucking better than Golden Bow of Quel'Thalas. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it wasn't like the greatest compared to. It also didn't look anywhere near as cool as the Warglaives.
Right? Can anybody correct me on that? I remember whenever the game came out, there was a big discussion about like whether it was even good or not. Yeah, it looks cool though. Yeah, it does.
It's probably the only like legendary, or he says unique, but treated like a legendary, that is the least famous one. Maybe there's least like worse ones. I don't know, but I know like for its time, it was like the worst one.
It's crazy for hunters, but you don't need arrows. Yeah, true. I remember, didn't the first bow ever go to a rogue?
By a warrior. And in Wrath it's still early days, but prices are down on what they used to be.
Of course it was a warrior. Warriors are always the biggest whales. It's the same as in Lost Ark. Anytime you see somebody with a really high item level in Lost Ark, it's a berserker. Every single time.
It's the aesthetic. They want to be a big badass.
In Classic and TBC due to generally more gearing options and smaller raid sizes.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is
I still remember my raid had the toughest time with Malygos. I don't know why. I have no idea why. It was like the only raid that actually gave us a real tough time.
Potential downside of GDKPs encouraging gold buying is very, very real. There is quite literally no other part of the game that deals with volumes of gold this large.
Yes.
In fact, it wasn't till Wrath where Blizzard started putting things in the game such as the Dalaran Epic Rings for just under 8k or the Traveler's Tundra Mammoth for 16k that there was an actual reason to have this much cash lying about. Before that, it was all player driven, and
we did have the bag in Burning Crusade, and 5,000 gold was a pretty hefty fucking fee in Burning Crusade as well. There were gold sinks in BC, but he's absolutely right that there were way more in Wrath.
in Classic, player-driven meant somebody had nearly 200,000 gold to spend on one item. Today, we are still in Tier 7, with Ulduar expected early 2023, and it's going to be pre-nerf Ulduar 2 with boosted item level gear, and I can tell you without a doubt that GDKPs will clear it week 1. Remember, Thoridal went for 350,000 gold week 1. Imagine the price of boosted...
That
I find it
sense.
unlikely that a GDKP will clear 0 light on week 1 on 25 men.
That's... I think it probably will happen. Only because, more than likely, the people who are going to do that kind of thing, they're already, like, training, most likely. They are making sure they have that fight down to a T. There's private servers that have it. There's the real servers. Like, it's not going to be that difficult. I think the most difficult part is any kind of gear checks, like DPS checks. And even then, like, let's be fair, these people are going to have the most optimal builds available with the best class. Like, everything's just going to be hyper optimized. So
if you assume 5 people there are not really playing the game, 20 manning, 0 light, pre-nerf, with 21 to 20 people alive, I mean, it seems unlikely. But we'll see. I could be wrong.
boosted item level weapons from Algalon or Yogg-Saron, for example. You bet the gold seller, honest players running 24 GDKPs a week are after that payout.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that right there is the big distinction between GDKP back then in 2008 to 10 and today.
What's that?
Gold can replace a guild, but it ain't cheap. The main reason
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true, so.
That's not true.
I see what he. Maybe I think I know where he's going to go with that, but I know what the narrator's talking about, or the main video. He's, like, the main reason a lot of people get into guilds is for gear. So, like, if you can buy that gear, you're buying the purpose of the guild. So, in that sense, yes.
Bro, like, for the longest time, like, my friends and I, we weren't in a guild. We're just mercenaries for hire. You pay us, we go up in the raid, we get the shit done. You give us the money, we come back next week.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all. That was one of the best things about it back in the day. Yeah, I mean, what are you talking about? Absolutely. I never did this shit with my guild. I always did it with pugs.
reasons are that
To be fair, Asman, like, you kind of scammed, or you were known for scamming, so it's like, you couldn't really do that with a guild, unless you wanted to lose the guild pretty quickly, so.
A,
Good deal,
turns
yeah.
out the content is still pretty easy for us. B, people are just generally much better at the game. We understand it better, we know how to min-max better, we know all the tactics in advance. And
Not
C,
everybody.
the stakes are higher. There's more gold involved now than there ever was before. And with GDKP
I just can't believe somebody fucking GDKP's next 25 man. Like, I mean, how bad do you have to be a buyer in the next 25 man raid? I mean, come on. It's not that hard.
becoming a lot more visible, there's been a lot more criticism
I think it's not about difficulty. It's most people just feel like that entrance to raiding is too high a bar, so they don't even realize like it is easy.
of it. What was once curiosity has now, for many, turned
Like, I think a lot of the buyers, they could probably even do the fights if they bothered to get into raiding, like learn about it and stuff like that. It's just they don't want to.
to disdain. Where there was once pug runs and soft reserve runs, now there's gold runs. Gameplay
I gotta use the restroom. I'll be back. I don't remember what they were talking about.
has been replaced
Yeah.
by a race to reach the finish line and restart a new character.
That's
One
right.
such post from a Chinese player
That's
during
right, boys. That's how it works, right? You buy the game, then you buy the expansion, you buy the level boost, you buy a level dungeon runs up to level 80, then you buy gold, and then you buy BOEs off the auction house, then you buy enchants for the BOEs, and then you get into a GDKP raid, you buy the gear out of the GDKP raid, you have to buy new enchants and new gems for the gear.
That almost sounds like the rap they did for when he was talking about Bar to Power and I think Shadowlands, like trying to get a ult up to the main character. I have a feeling people are going to clip him again for this one, but yeah, that was a lot.
You also have to buy the Hodir relics to get Hodir exalted, and then you buy the shoulder enchant for the shoulders that you bought, and then after that you get that much gear, and so you start doing arena. You buy a carry to 2k, so you're able to get all the deadly gear as well, and at that point you're finally able to play the game.
Yeah, man, when he goes over, it's just a lot. Like, I don't remember even half of those, but yeah.
It's exciting, huh? It's just like it used to be.
I swear to God.
Finally, you can play the game.
Classic highlights how after NetEase released the World of Warcraft token on Chinese realms during Phase 2, gold farmers flocked to NA as they could make up to 7 times as much from farming there. And
Yeah, because literally the people here spend more fucking money than the people over there.
In general, definitely.
It's that simple.
this day, North American realms always seem to be the region that has the most attempts at botting. The WoW forums and Reddit frequently
Well, the reason why is that NA has the best economy.
For botters, yeah. It's pretty, and that's what I was talking about, like botting, like they're gonna ruin the economy. But there's a reason why they do what they do.
So we have the most money. You want to fish where the fish are.
Well, you want to fish with the biggest fish.
And if you might as well be fishing, you're going to fish for the big fish.
Oh, there he
And
is.
there's a
So,
lot of big fish over here in the US.
yeah, I was gonna say like China has like a ton more fish, but the bigger fish are much bigger in the U.S. I wonder. I'm not saying like Chinese like there aren't rich people in China. I think like the rich though in America buy dumb stuff. Maybe it's different in China. I don't know. It's just maybe they just don't have as many gamers that are whales in China.
Arguments that GDKP has gone too far. It's replacing the game with paid services, clearly incentivized by buying gold for real money. What was once guilds running old content back then has turned into a substitution for raiding with a guild.
Which I think is okay. That's emergent player behavior.
It is, and like I said, I have no problem with it. I also think it's like a good thing, as long as Blizzard keeps bots in check. Like if they can't do that, then no, because it's going to ruin the game for most players who aren't willing to spend money, which is not a thing you really want to incentivize um, in long term enjoyment.
I think that almost all emergent player behavior in a video game is good.
GDKP has also very quickly and clearly become the most lucrative gold farm possible in the game. Why on earth would I go herbing or farming in the open world when I can pocket potentially thousands of gold for an easy raid clear for somebody else's fresh ult? Again, it's hard to argue with the results, but Blizzard, so far, have been pretty content to leave this player-made environment exist. In the past, they've gone after other player discoveries such as boosting, which they finally determined as being not healthy for the game.
Uh, that or they just want to be in charge of being the main sellers of it. I don't know. Do they have boosting? I can't remember if they added it to Classic WoW. But, I mean, to be fair, WoW in general, Blizzard is pretty lazy. Like, botting's been an issue for a while, and they still haven't really done too much about it, so.
It is still possible, just to a lesser degree than it once was. Should they go after GDKPs next? How would that even be done? There's hardly going to be a GM watching over every raid, is there? For me in this situation, I've never really been a fan of the whole GDKP system. Of course, I think beyond anything else it encourages gold buying, though I will say since TBC, the actual need for gold in order to get consumed.
What they need to do is just really focus on bots and them selling. Like, that's really it. Obviously, the WoW token's like its own animal, but like if they can get that under control, like GDKP is perfectly fine.
Raid, PvP, and so.
It's not that bad in Wrath. Like you don't really need to do it. I'm gonna be real. I actually think that GDKP is great. I used to participate in a lot of GDKPs as a player and also as running the GDKPs myself. I love them. I thought they were really fun and enjoyable. I got a lot out of them. It made it to where I didn't have to farm gold. I could just, use my gear and be able to play the game in the way that I wanted to and pay for my own shit on my own.
Yeah, it's like really, really good.
It was great. I think GDKPs are really good. I also dislike the idea that you should punish the entire player base because Blizzard decided not to moderate their own game.
Exactly what I was saying. Because they did not keep in check the bots, they now have to remove things that made the game really cool.
What they're effectively saying is that you can no longer engage in this emergent player behavior because we are unwilling to finance GMs to ban people that are botting and buying gold.
Exactly. 100% exactly. Like, this kind of player behavior is great. And honestly, Ashes of Creation, I'm so looking forward to that. Because I have a feeling that they know for that kind of game, bots are going to be their kryptonite. If they cannot get the botting situation under control, that game's going to be dead on arrival. Like, maybe not on arrival, but like, it's not going anywhere if they cannot get the bot situation under control, which you're going to find out fairly early on. And to me, that's going to be determining whether I play the game like long term. Like if they can't get the bots under control with like right away, or like you're running into bots all over the place, I'm not touching that game again. Maybe like new servers and they have the bots again under control. I don't know, but like that to me, for a game like Ashes, like Warcraft, obviously you can tell like even this kind of thing is being affected by bots, but like Ashes of Creation is going to be like a whole another level of it. And bots are like they're going to do their absolute best because there's going to be some crazy people wanting to spend tons of money once they get in that game.
Which I will simply not accept. Like, I would rather not play a game than see a game's quality diminished because of some bullshit like this.
Exactly, and that's was my feelings on Ashes. It's also why I know a lot of people are like nervous or skeptical on the world PvP with Ashes, and honestly, that's going to be really hard to get right, just because it's so easy to get wrong with that kind of system. Because you got to remember there's going to be probably millions of people playing Ashes of Creations. Probably, who knows really, but I would assume so. So if 10%, let's say even 5% of the player base want to be jerks, that's literally thousands of people who are going to do their best to make everyone around them like have a worse experience. Like that is going to be their goal. And unfortunately that's just how the game is. So it's like how they should really go into it with Ashes, the developers. Assume the worst. Assume people are going to do everything they can to grief as many players as they can in any way they can. That is the only way they're going to be able to get that system right. Because it's going to happen. Unfortunately, like every time that system comes out, it always happens where you get people who want to grief. And I know a lot of people like, oh no, it's going to be like way less than that. Like maybe like whatever, like a handful of people. It's like, no, that's, you don't know psychology, like you've never played an MMO then that had those systems. Because one, it's kind of niche and to begin with, but it's not niche if it's in a very large game. Like say World of Warcraft, for example. World of Warcraft was not niche, like it's one of the largest ones, and yet it had systems similar to it, and people took advantage of it and griefed the heck out of other people. A lot of people quit because of that too. They had to remove it. If you notice, it's not really a thing anymore. There's a reason for that. So I don't know. Like I'm both nervous and excited with Ashes because it's like if they don't nail that right, if they don't get the bots down, like there's a few things that could go wrong that would just ruin that whole game.
Oh, we can't beat the gold sellers? Yeah, you can. You easily can.
Yep, you find basically like a GM, like just one GM per server could probably do it too, where they could knock out most bots. Maybe not all. Like honestly, I think three GMs a server would like knock out like 70 to 80% of bots.
You've got to be a fucking moron to not be able to figure it out.
One is just way down on what it was in Classic. But it's not just that, it's just kind of GDKP breaks what the game is all about for me, and here's what I mean. For me,
opposite. For me, my class fantasy mainly is being a mercenary, being tied down to no one.
I think a lot of people would actually lean towards Asmon's end goal kind of thing. I think that's why GDKP is also so prevalent, is that you don't want to be tied down to a guild. You don't really want to get involved in all that stuff. You just want the gear.
Existing on my own, by myself, for myself, with a handful of loose associates that we sometimes get together and we pull off an event.
The Kirito fantasy, yeah.
You know? That's what I like doing. So personally, like my class fantasy, my MMO fantasy is being a mercenary in that way, right? And it's an ebb and flow, right? Sometimes you like that. Sometimes you like, being in a guild and like running a guild with like your group of friends. Usually I go back and forth, and this is what I've always done.
Yeah.
classic, and I guess WoW as a whole is like a pyramid
I think a lot of people do that, but I think they mostly lean on the solo experience. Just because you can kind of play when you want, how you want. Well, when you're playing with a group, if someone's not online when they need to be, like it's it's more commitment when you're in a group like that. So
of content. At the bottom you have leveling your character, and then you have the
Yes.
middle portion, your farming badges, your prebis, professions, enchants, gems, gold farming, all of that good stuff. And right at the top of the pyramid is raiding. That's the peak. That's what it's all
Well,
for.
like there used to be a bug where this shit would kill you even if you were this far away, and I got killed by it, and everybody said that it was my fault. But then there was a patch notes, and it said that it wasn't my fault because like they changed the hit radius of it, and then everybody said I was lying, and then I showed the patch notes of it, and then they just called me bald. And
that's usually the case whenever Asmund has like a good like rebuttal. Like just call him bald, we win.
it's like you just can't win. But it wasn't my fault whenever I got hit by that. No, and this isn't the recent one. Like the recent one that I stood in, I got hit by, that was totally my fault though.
That's why I'm going out to learn my class, seeing what talents work best, making sure I have the correct consumables and so on. I want to do as well as possible when I raid. So when I take raiding and then just turn it into another gold farm, it's like the top of the pyramid has been taken off and thrown into mid-game content. It's just not...
No, because like if you were one of the carriers for GDKP, you had to be stacked. You had to know what to do. You had to take initiative. You had to have the gear. You had to have the enchants. You had to be fucking ready to go.
Yeah, when you hit the ceiling, basically. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's what I'm saying. That's what he says, and that's what I agree with. Like, once you hit that ceiling, like, it kind of sucks when you have nothing else to do, you know? Like, why not give incentives to go and do these, like, help people get gear themselves by running the dungeon, for like, with them, like, making it easier for them. Like, who doesn't, you guys ever have that happen? You're running a dungeon or whatever, you're playing an MMO, doesn't really matter which one, and you just happen to get a group, like a LFG group, just random pug, and maybe one or two people are just freaking stacked, like they're like geared, like leveled up, whatever it may be. Like basically they could almost solo the damn thing without you. Like those are so much fun because they just blow through things. Like it's just crazy. You're just like, damn, dude, I want to be like that. So it's like, I think most people run into that at least some point playing MMOs, and it's like always really cool. So like that's why like personally I don't have any problem with GDKPs. I just they need to get the bot situation under control, otherwise it gets crazy like that. The 198,000, like that's just ridiculous.
So yeah, it's like if you were a carry for GDKPs, you had to be good.
Yep.
what raiding should be for me. I farm gold so I can raid. I don't raid to farm gold. And I
do.
like to keep those two things completely separate as much.
Why? I mean, why would you have to farm gold to raid too? Like to me, it's kind of stupid either way. Like if you're gonna say one is better than the other, that's not an argument that I would agree with. Because farm gold to raid. Why do you have to farm gold to raid? I can understand farming dungeons to get the gear to raid, but farming gold to raid is, I think, stupid. Like I think that adds barriers to the entry of raiding that doesn't really need to be there. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I think that's dumb. I hate doing stuff like that. Doing raids to farm gold. I don't mind. I think it makes more sense than the other way around because you're doing end game content. There's nothing wrong with rewarding you with some gear and a bit of gold on the side. Maybe you don't really need the gear, but you can get some gold out of it. Like that to me makes much more sense than the other one.
Much as I can.
I
But
hate
again,
farming gold to
that's
raid.
just me. I think there's
Oh, exactly what I said, man. That's so stupid. Like, I some of the things this guy brings up, I agree with, but man, that was kind of a dumb take. Farming gold to raid, like no one likes doing that. I've met, like no one in my guild like doing it. Like building up the potions and all that garbage. It's stupid.
definitely a divide between players who are more loot driven and are more content driven. I mean, how many people did you hear quit back in
Most people are a mix of the two. Like it's very rare you get someone who's like, all I care about is the loots. All I care about is the content. Even though they're kind of the same thing, to be honest. Because loot is content. I don't know why you would think it's not, but it definitely is. Um, but yeah.
In Classic or TBC after they got that one item they've been after forever. You can even test this too. Take this example. Imagine this scenario. You're doing a speedrun with your guild of next 25.
That's what happens to me every time. The moment I finish my best in slot, I say later, bitch. But GDKP's changed that. And I remember I would come back even after I got my full best in slot.
Yeah, if you don't have a tight guild, that is super common. Like my brother, man, he was a priest and I think it was Burning Crusade or it could have been vanilla. And this dude was guild hopping like crazy. Like, because everyone wanted a healer, because no one liked healing. Back to that Trinity argument. So it's like he join a guild, get the loot because they were trying to gear him out because he's the healer. He'd leave that guild for an even better guild who was running something higher tier. Do the exact same thing, get as much loot as he could. Once he felt like he couldn't really get any more loot from them, he'd immediately he didn't care about progressing with them. Like he's just like, give me whatever loot you have available. All right, peace. And he'd go he did that all the way to the very top. Like he started at not the very low rungs of guilds, made it to the very top of the guild, like the best guild on the server. And then once he got what was that Corn of the Cob staff? I forget the name of it. But like the freaking best in slot, like once he had best in slot everything for his priest, he quit the game. He made a new character and just never raided again with that priest. It's like, and I remember I lost a friend, not friend, but one of the people I because one of the guilds I had him join. This was before he was doing all the guild hopping. One of the first guilds I had him join was from a friend's guild because they're like, hey, we need a heal. I was like, oh, my brother heals. Let me ask him if he'll join you guys. And yep, freaking guild hop, and he's like, dude, your brother we gave him this and then he just left. And I was just like, oh no, are you kidding me? Started classic WoW drama. So, but yeah, no, that was so funny. When he told me, and I'd see him every day with a different guild almost. What the hell? Oh my god! I worked I raided all the time, and he outgeared me in a week. It was just so funny.
Dragon Soul. If we had,
and I didn't think anything of I don't think it's bad to guild hop because it's well, that's on them. They should have waited a little bit before just giving you gear.
2 buyers for the mounts. Yeah, I show up. Yeah, I show up. Yeah, why not?
You're not aiming for world first or anything, just trying to get your 1 hour 15 clear down to a 1 hour 5 minute clear, for example. And in the end, everything goes amazingly, better than you could have possibly imagined, and you get a sub 1 hour clear. Not only that, but you get immortal as well because nobody died. However, nothing dropped that you wanted. Or would you prefer joining a GDKP weekly of next 25 and
I mean, if you're running speed runs, you probably have all the gear you need from that anyways. It doesn't really matter, right? Because it's also a case where people do runs that don't give them gear, but that there's achievements like immortal and stuff. There's definitely people who do that. Maybe they're not as common as the ones who do it for gear, but I think they're does it really matter? I don't know. Because if you're in a guild that could do speed runs, honestly, most people are just good with that. They're just okay, well, I'll get my gear eventually because we're knocking this out so fast. It doesn't matter. I guess super impatient people, yeah, I'll eventually get it, but I want it now.
2 BIS items for you go for really cheap. Imagine you're on your warrior and Grimtal and Betrayer of Humanity.
Bro, that's literally what it was for me. It was literally Brintrol. I minimum bid that shit. I minimum bid that shit because it was heroic, and minimum bid was 5K. I bid that, and I was I was holding my breath. Nobody bid this shit up, and then I got it. I remember I got that fucking that weapon, and I used it to solo shit all the time because it would proc like crazy whenever you were playing prot. Oh my god, Grimtoll? Oh, Brintroll's the same thing. Grimtoll, like, yeah, I guess, well, people use that. Yeah, Grimtoll. Is that the Tin Man one? Maybe it's not. I don't remember.
Drop for only a
Maybe I
few
heard it wrong.
thousand gold each, or being a caster and getting Dying Curse and the Turning Tide for
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember that.
the same amount. Which scenario
Yeah.
would you feel better about? Amazing run with your guild,
Which one would you feel better about? That's a weird thing to compare, to be honest. I think a better comparison would have been doing a GDKP where you're buying the gear that drops that you want. Because his logic is this: that no gear dropped on the fast run, right? So imagine joining a GDKP and none of the gear you want drops, so you can't bid for anything. Which would feel better, the speed run with your guild or the GDKP that you couldn't get anything either? Like both give you nothing, right? I would like most people would say the guild one, 100% the guild one. So let's change it up so they're actually are comparable. Say you're doing your speed run and the same gear drops that you could use, and that same gear drops on a GDKP. GDKP, you're guaranteed that loot, while on the speed run, you have a chance at that loot, so you're rolling for it. Which would feel better, you winning those rolls or you buying that gear? I think winning the rolls would feel better, but losing would also feel worse than buying it. You see what I'm saying? Like, they balance each other out. Once you compare them apples to apples versus his apple to oranges, like weird thing he did. Um, I have no idea why he compared it that way. That's kind of a dumb comparison, but yeah, like when you compare gear, like obtaining gear in that same vein, like okay, rolling and winning definitely feels better than just buying it. But also, it also feels worse when you lose it versus when you could have just bought it. So
or cheap
I think most people would have chosen the guild thing. If but it's the getting into the guild that can do that. That's the biggest issue, the biggest hurdle for people, for most people, and that's why they do the GDKP in general.
epics in a GDKP. Not that
Loot for nothing and perps for free. Let's get that. Or minimum bid.
there's a wrong answer, it's just people are motivated differently.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all. In any event, it appears
Yeah, but the also such a cop out answer because it's like I don't know. Like I disagree with like the way he was comparing it, and Asman like obviously has his what he prefers, which is the whole buying gear, running GDKPs himself, which is fun. Like I said, I think it's actually a good thing. But let's also be fair. Like I think a lot of WoW players have, especially if you've been playing the game since like I would at least say like Wrath, is when you're running with your guild mates and you're pushing content and stuff, and then your piece drops, and then you win that loot, especially if it's like something that's a big upgrade, like a weapon. Like that feeling is just so much better than just buying that gear.
that GDKP is here to stay.
Good.
Having become popular in Classic so much earlier than it ever did in Vanilla, it's now grown into a core gold farm
need to
and
get that
alt
axe.
gearing system for many players around the world. Though honestly, I'd rather it wasn't really a thing. I don't see a realistic way to actually stop it
love
from
it.
happening. Even
The only way you're going to stop that from happening is if you get rid of gold, as like people being able to trade gold with each other. It's literally the only way. And even then, you'd have to stop like materials that they would just use as a substitute for gold as well. So unless you're disabling all trading altogether, there's really nothing you can do about it.
if you stop
It's the inevitable for any game with group content, uh, where you can carry people, which is like MMOs in general. Like you'd have to take apart the MMO like as turn it into a standard RPG where you just happen to see people.
people advertising it at this point, it's so well established, people would just
The
go
reason why I like it so much is like it gives a player that doesn't have a lot of time but is good at the game a rewarding and guaranteed way to make money.
It also, I don't know if he's going to mention it, but it also gives people who have a lot of time, aren't that good at the game, to farm gold. Or even if you don't have a lot of time, just say you're not that good at the game, eventually you can farm enough gold to buy these kind of items. You know what I'm saying? Like, say you hate raiding. Maybe you're good at the game, but you hate raiding. So you'd prefer to just farm stuff, farm some gold, and then do a GDKP run to get your gear. Like, it just, the more avenues or more ways you give people to play a game, the better the game, in my opinion. As long as those avenues are roughly like not like too different in terms of like accessibility. Um, at least to me, like that way, you know, if you're the type of person, maybe you can play 2 hours a day or less than that. Just do some dailies, get some gold, save up that gold, and then you know at the end of the week or whatever, how long it took, um, you know, look for someone who's selling a run to the place you want to go. Like that to me is just like that's pretty cool that you can do that. That's actually experiencing the MMO experience almost at its essence because that wouldn't be possible in a non MMO. So
Because like if you have good gear and you know what you're doing, you can join a GDKP as a carrier and you can get all the gear. Or sorry, you can get all the money and you don't need the
yep.
gear. So like it gives you a reason to continue playing the game. I think
It also makes you feel pretty badass. Like when you're the carrier, like obviously the gold is definitely the freaking cherry on top, but like being the carrier of a GDKP is super. Like you feel like you're carrying it, like you're this titan. So
GDKP is so good.
Seeking it out. I guess it's a bit of a testament of how players choose to engage with the game
You're like, I don't
differently
wanna farm this shit.
nowadays. Everyone
Fuck
wants
that.
something of value for their time when they're playing a video game, and no one wants to waste their time playing World.
man, the kind of farming he's doing is the kind of farming I hate the most. I hate that kind of farming, even if it was like considered the best, especially in this area, Dire Mall. If I remember right, that's where that sword dropped. It's I do it with friends or I don't do it. Like basically those that's my mentality on these kind of stuff.
of Warcraft. Makes you think a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Anyways, hope you liked the video. If you did, drop a like, it helps out. Let me know.
Great video. I don't agree with a lot of his points, but like the conversation, like I really really like that. Like the conversation on it because it has a lot of points to it that are pretty deep and you can really get into it. Yeah, really really great video.
Your thoughts and experiences on
I
or
love
in
it.
GDKPs if you have any. And as always, thank you for watching and listening in. And I'll see you all in the next one very soon.
Yeah, I don't have his video up because I'm reacting to Asmon's, but I always go through the videos and just like them. Um, and of course, like in cases where I'm like, okay, that's actually like an interesting video, I'll subscribe to them or follow them, whatever it's called in YouTube. But let's see.
Mega fan of GDKP. Yep, I love it.
That's an interesting Patreon thing he's going. I don't think I've ever seen any other creator do something like this. That's super cool. I really like that.
GDKP equals Giga Dick keeps pounding. True. And that's what we used to do.
Okay. Yeah, I've never heard that. I seriously haven't ever heard that one.
This is a good WoW video. I'm glad to hear other people talking about this. You never done it? Bro, I was doing GDKPs whenever you were probably in fucking middle school.
Yeah, I mean, GDKPs have been around, man. And then they're not going away. Not unless you play single player games.
You probably didn't even know what porn was. I already had a fucking GDKP item. Shut up, bitch. Get the fuck out of here. I want to hear your shit.
Look
There
at
you
them
go.
tabs.
Let me link y'all the video. That's a good WoW video.
I messed
I
that up.
actually, I remember I saw this a day ago.
Look at all
I
those
was like,
tabs
oh
he
my
has,
God,
man.
I have to watch this. I
Jesus.
cannot wait to watch this. I was so excited to see this one. Everyone whined about Dungeon Boost, but GDKP are fine. I didn't whine about Dungeon Boost.
Dungeon
I
Boost
never
is
whined about
basically
that
the
shit.
same.
There's no reason for it.
Level boosting. That's the
Have you
one
seen
I
the
don't
Platinum
agree
WoW new
with.
video? No, I haven't yet. Remember what killed Vanilla Classic for me? GKP was everywhere. Gold buying was rampant and destroyed any meaning in the game for many.
Yeah, because they didn't have the bots in check. That's literally it.
Bro, like, what do you mean the meaning in the game? Where, like, you and a bunch of other dumb fucks get together and get a bunch of world buffs and kill Kel'Thuzad? Like, what do you think is a meaning in the game? Like, get the fuck out. It's a joke-ass fucking game. You beat the fuck out of that game 15 years ago. Like, what meaning in the game? You know what meaning in the game is? There's a dollar amount for that fucking meaning, and sometimes that was like 20,000 gold in the pot, man. I get 9K out of some of those runs. That was some big fucking money. Yeah, 2 fucking mechanics. What's your point? The point is that, like, the meaning in the game is just bullshit. Like, you're gonna.
I mean, everyone is deriving something different from games. Most people derive just entertainment out of it, fulfillment, whatever it is. Maybe a combination of the two, most likely. But the meaning of the game, I mean, I kind of see what he's saying. If like your whole thing is just like getting hard to come by loot and being one of the few people to get it, then okay, then fine. You're not going to be that dude because GDKPs are everywhere because everyone's going to get gear, so you're not feeling special anymore. So if that's your meaning, like what you get out of your game, then true, that's true. Well, you can get that out of other stuff. Like, why do you have to force that on WoW? But in general, I mean, as I keep saying, like, take away the bots and GDKP is perfectly fine. Even I don't even care about gold sellers. Because if you're selling gold, that's up to you, but it's the botting that's the problem. Because bots are going to be way more efficient at farming gold than you because they can literally do it 24 hours.
Try to make the excuse like, oh, it ruined GDKP for you, then don't fucking do it, bitch.
Yeah, you don't have to do GDKP, just join a guild and progress normally. Like, if you're too lazy to do that, then don't complain about GDKPs. Because to be fair, you're not really on either end of that system. You're not the buyer because you don't have the gold, I'm assuming. And you're not the seller because you're too lazy to, join a guild, gear up, and then start selling your services.
Then don't fucking quit telling everybody else what they gotta do. You don't like GDKP? Don't fucking do GDKP. Damn, it's not hard. God, it's such a bunch of fucking pussies, man.
And that's what I was talking about the lazy peon videos. How he was like, "Oh, I'm trying to play the game. How I've been told to play it," and that's just not how you should try to play games. Just play games how you want to play it. Just like Asmongold, like he likes GDKP, he should be able to do GDKP. If you don't like GDKP, well, guess what? There are other avenues of getting gear without GDKP. You don't have to do GDKP. It's probably one of the more easier options, I suppose, if you are gonna buy gold with real money. But at the same time, it's definitely not the only option.
I hate this. Ugh. Stop making it sound so easy.
It's super easy. Like, I know a lot of people have trouble finding like friends and guilds in games. That's honestly because that first step is the hardest. Just like making friends in real life. The first step is always the hardest, putting yourself out there. But it's not difficult. Like, so a lot of people sometimes say I'm a shy person. I'm actually not. Like, I just don't like talking to people. But when I need to talk to them, I'll walk up to a stranger and talk to them. I don't care. If I need to talk to you, I'm going to go and talk to you. So it's like, but a lot of people do find that first initial contact, like, it's why some people, when they need assistance or help, like, they have a bit of trouble, like, unless you're wearing like a uniform, like whether that's a store uniform, police uniform, whatever it is, like, people kind of have trouble just walking up to a stranger and like, hey, can you help me with this? And it's the same with like MMOs, like, just asking people like, hey, looking for guild with chill people. A lot of games now have it where the guilds put on there like what kind of guild they are. Like, are they chill, they hardcore, do they do PvP, PvE, what times they raid, if they raid, do they do little events? Like, it's just so much easier now than it was even like in classic WoW, and everyone was in a guild in classic WoW. So it's like, there's not really an excuse to think that it's hard. It's actually super easy. It's more of a case of, one, it is a bit of a commitment, but the main one I actually believe is just messaging, like applying, getting in there, like, hey guys, thanks for inviting me. um, how do I sign up? Like, just try to be interactive, even if you know how to sign up. Just like, hey guys, can anyone show me how to sign up? Not show me, but like, I signed up for the thing. Could someone make sure that actually did I do that right? Like, stuff like that. Just like trying to get involved in the guild is honestly the hardest part, especially early on. I mean, you don't know anyone. No one there is your friend. You can't read body language. It's online, so you can't like really tell if like they even have an interest in speaking to you. But it's not difficult. It's not difficult.
It's so hard to get a group of people that have the same mindset as me. They better change the
They don't even have to have the same mindset, really.
whole game.
It's mostly the time you can play and whether they're casual, hardcore kind of thing. Like, I guess maybe if that's just what he's referring to, a mindset, then yeah,
Get the fuck out of here.
that was a good video. And this is why I prefer to react to Asmin reacting to something else, because it's his commentary on things elevates it, and that is more interesting to me.